Hello, and welcome to this month's Rights in Russia interview. It's January 29th, 2026, and our guests today are Jens Siegert and Bill Bowring. Jens Siegert is a journalist, author, and political scientist from Germany who lived and worked in Moscow for more than 30 years, beginning in 1993. He has headed the Russia office of the Heinrich Böll Foundation and the EU project Public Diplomacy, EU and Russia at the Goethe Institute in Moscow. His most recent book is Where is Russia Going? Scenarios for the Time After Putin, published in German in October 2024. Emeritus Professor Bill Bowring is an academic and practicing barrister since 1976, who has both taught human rights and international law at Birkbeck College, University of London, and represented applicants in cases against Russia at the European Court of Human Rights. He founded the European Human Rights Advocacy Center in 2003 and has written widely on international law, human rights, minority rights, Russian law, and philosophy, including his book, Law, Rights, and Ideology in Russia, Landmarks in the Destiny of a Great Power. His monograph, The Degradation of the International Legal Order, was published in Russian translation in 2021. So welcome to Rights in Russia, Jens Siegert and Bill Bowring.
Hello.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello. You are both associates of the well-known Russian human rights organization Memorial. So what is the situation of the organization at the moment? What challenges does it currently face? And what's its future? Jens, could you lead off on this question?
Yeah, Memorial, as you know, or better, the umbrella organization of Memorial, named International Memorial, has been closed by the Russian authorities in spring 2022, as well as the Memorial Human Rights Center. The Memorial Human Rights Center, I suppose Bill is cooperating more, is working, is continuing its work without having a formal juridical form. And they mostly operate from outside Russia, from exile. There is a small center in Paris now, but people working and active at the Human Rights Center are living almost all over Europe. The International Memorial, the umbrella organization, has been re-established sort of in 2023 as it now named International Association Memorial. It is legally based in Geneva in Switzerland and physically based in Prague, where the main office is located, and is now more or less a network of memorial organizations abroad. There are only three Russian memorial organizations a member of this international association. This is two from St. Petersburg and an organization which names Russian Memorial. Maybe it's a little bit complicated, but this Russian Memorial has been existing all the time, but almost invisible, because almost everything did the umbrella organization International Memorial, and the Russian Memorial was appearing only if one needed a voice, a purely Russian voice. Not an international, which in Russian politics, in Russian public life, sometimes is necessary. And why only this Russian Memorial is a member of the new umbrella organization is quite easy. It's maybe weak, but at least it's an attempt to protect all memorial activists who are still in Russia and working in Russia, and there are quite a few still doing work in Russia. As it might sound a little bit absurd, for example, in Moscow every month, the local memorial, the Memorial Moscow, is organizing excursions on the topography of terror in Russia. It is announced in the internet. You can sign up in the internet, and people gather in central Moscow, groups of 10, 15, 20 persons, and then they may make guided excursions on that. That is still possible, but a lot of things is not possible. Then different exile organizations appeared. One of them is an organization in Berlin named Zukunft Memorial, or Future Memorial, where I'm part of the board. And this organization is trying to continue the sort of a coordination of the historical work of Memorial. One part is that the archive, the Memorial archive, is still in Russia, and it is still in the hands of Memorial. But for example, we try, and we succeeded quite a lot to digitalize all this archive. That if sometime, when the Russian state will try to take over this archive, and it is the biggest archive about the Stalinist terror, about the dissident movement, about, for example, Soviet forced labor in Nazi Germany, that the information is and will be still available. But we are trying to continue the work as well. For example, you see my T-shirt. This small person is a man in history. There has been a famous pupils contest in Russia for more than 20 years. Men in History, Russia in the 20th century, where pupils from the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade are writing sort of scientific works about people in the Russian history. And we are trying to continue, not only trying, we are continuing this this contest now, from organizing from Berlin on, or organizing exhibitions, publications, helping other memorial organizations. A lot of this work now is to secure that people that have been forced or must leave Russia, that they can stay somewhere in the EU with a legal status. This is it sounds banal, but it is not banal to organize that. Yeah, it's quite an effort. You know that you in the US know that with your current situation, that even refugees are not always welcome in the West at the moment. So Memorial is under pressure, but Memorial is far from that. Bill may add something about the Human Rights Center. Oleg Alov, the former head of the Memorial Human Rights Center, who has been imprisoned in Russia and came free in 2024 during this big exchange between Russia and the West, where the prisoners exchange. He's now in Berlin as well, and he's working from our office. So we try to keep everything together, which have been together in Moscow and in Russia, which is not possible anymore.
Oh, well, that's incredible. I think some of what you say is quite surprising and heartening. Bill, did you have anything to add?
If I may.
Yes, absolutely.
Memorial has been very much part of my life for a long time. So I was first in the Soviet Union and Russia, of course, from 1983. And I was working with people who founded Memorial in 1988. And then right through that period of the 90s, when I was contracted to the UK's aid organization, then doesn't exist anymore, Department for International Development, and doing projects with Moscow, Helsinki Group and others. And when Russia under Yeltsin ratified the European Convention on Human Rights, and the following, a year or so later, Putin started the Second Chechen War, then I was working much more intensively with Memorial. The Human Rights Center at that time was one person who wasn't even a lawyer. She had different training. And what I did in 2002 was to get €1 million from the European Commission to set up the European Human Rights Advocacy Center, in which the partners were Memorial in Moscow, London Metropolitan University, where I was working, and the Human Rights Committee of the Bar of England and Wales. So the €1 million was for the first 3 years. So ECRAC still exists in London, but we had Kirill Korotev, who's still very much around. He was one of the original people working with the Human Rights Center of Memorial in Moscow. And Kirill, me, and Philip Leach represented the first Chechen victims whose children were killed in the refugee column from Grozny, which was bombed by the Russians. We won that in 2005. And then we took hundreds of cases against Russia, initially on behalf of Chechens, but then environmental cases and other cases as well. And of course, Oleg Orlov was absolutely central to that, with Tatiana Kasatkina, and of course, Cherkasov and other wonderful people. So what we had was a full set of case files, identical in Moscow and in London. So it was a major operation. And since, I don't think we got money from Heinrich Böll, actually, but after the EC money, we had money from a large number of charitable foundations, in particular Open Society, Soros, and so on. So since the banning of Memorial effectively in Russia, of course, a lot of us are still very much in touch. And those of us who were also on the academic side of things are now active in the Free University of the Russian Free University, which is very many wonderful people who are now in exile also. So Jens, thank you very much for the detail of how Memorial is surviving outside of Russia. And we're all, actually a lot of people are still very active.
Great, thank you. You mentioned the Chechen War, and I'd like to turn now to the Ukraine invasion, and I'd like to think about what the current state of that invasion is. Apparently, there are some negotiations going on at some level, but the U.S. seems to have reduced its support for Ukraine. And while there isn't very much movement on the front lines, Russia seems to be intensifying attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, in particular power generation and heating in a very cold winter. Bill, I'll turn to you to comment on this, if you would.
Yes, I think there's a serious misconception because, of course, in February 2022, Putin, who's a delusional imperialist, believed that the same would happen with Ukraine as happened with Georgia in 2008, that there would be a 5 or 10-day war. And of course, the crack Russian paratroops who were sent to Hostomel Airport outside Kiev had their dress uniforms with them because they were going to be marching through Kiev, being given bread and salt and being welcomed by the population of Kiev for saving them from the Jewish Nazis. And, so actually, if Putin had asked me, which he didn't, I knew Medvedev in the old days, but he's gone mad, of course. Putin, had he asked me, I would have said, you're making a serious mistake. Because I've been going to Ukraine since 1992, starting with Donetsk, a lot of work in Crimea over the years. And I would have said, Ukrainians are a bunch of bastards. They're Cossacks. And you do not pick a fight, in my experience, with Ukrainians. And the fact that the war is still going on means that Russia has lost as a fact. And when you read this nonsense in the press or the media saying, oh, Russia is winning, don't think so. I mean, there's not a war. Still, if you call it a war, you go to prison for 15 years. It's a special military occupation for denazifying Ukraine and demilitarizing Ukraine. That is the official line. Who's doing the fighting? It's not white kids from European Russia. That's because in order to have conscription, there would need to be a war, but there's not a war. So who's fighting? It's North Koreans in large numbers, it's prisoners in large numbers, and it's unfortunate kids from the ethnic republics of Russia. So I would say definitively, Russia has lost this war, and things are much worse in Russia than is generally understood in the West. So I said my unfortunate parent-in-law is still there. There's nothing in the shops. There's no petrol. All over Russia now, the Ukrainians are hitting, you say quite rightly, Russia is behaving, of course, in the most cruel fashion possible in the middle of winter to try and cut off power and heating in Ukraine. Meanwhile, though, the Ukrainians are hitting refineries and weapons factories and installations all over Russia. And there are many regions of Russia now where there is no petrol. So this idea that Russia is somehow winning, I think there's desperation on the Russian side, by the way. And I say finally that Putin poses an existential threat to Russia. Because as a matter of fact, of course, he cannot stop the war he started, because that would be the end of him. But he poses a serious threat to the future of Russia as the multi-ethnic, multi-faith, huge country which it still is. Part of the reason being that when you go east from European Russia, it's the Russian Empire still. Because it was a terrestrial empire, of course, unlike the British Maritime Empire. So I would say that actually, no, I'm not saying that Ukraine will have a victory tomorrow, but the Ukrainians are not going to surrender, by the way. And I think it's very interesting that they have established fortresses in the areas of Donbass which have not been taken by Russia. And how much progress has Russia made? Massive loss. So
yes.
My starting and finishing point is Russia has actually lost this war already.
Thank you, Bill. Jens, do you have something to add to that?
I'm not quite so optimistic like Bill to state that Russia has already lost this war, but it certainly didn't win the war. That's what Putin is trying to force now with this terrible bombs and rockets and missiles, which are every night and nowadays even in daytime sometimes coming over Ukraine cities. And 2 days ago, even a passenger train was hit by missile, and
Mhm.
many people died. What they try to do is to break the mood. Bill talked about the very brave mood of Ukrainians. This week in Kiev there will be -20 and below temperatures, and 400 or 500 big houses are without heating, without electricity. Yeah, these are the mayor of Kiev told people to leave the city if they can, if they have. And fortunately, in Ukraine, like in Russia, many people have a dacha where they can mostly heat, not with electricity, but with wood or coal or something like that. So we don't know how this will end, and a very big factor, a very big sad factor, is the Trump administration, Trump himself, the Trump administration, who seems to side much more with Russia than with Ukraine. He agreed to almost all demands of Russia to split Ukraine and to give parts of Ukraine to Russia, parts which at the moment Russia occupies, but even parts which it didn't succeed to occupy today. But I think, and I'm convinced, that this won't stop Putin. If he will get that, then it will only fuel his hunger, and he will go further. At least that's what we see in history all the time. If aggressors, if you give in to aggressors, then their hunger is growing. It's not they are not fed up. So
go ahead.
A lot will depend on how the Europeans are standing in words. Yeah, they are standing at the moment. They say more or less the right words, but what they are doing is still not enough. And there's still a lot of discussions going on, which are more going in the direction we have to make that Putin can't win, and not to help the Ukrainians to win. So yeah, I'm not sure, where this will lead, especially if we are looking to the political landscape, and there will be elections in France. There will be elections in the UK, where a party which is near to Trump is leading now in the polls. There will be elections at some time in Germany again, and the AfD, which is very much repeating Putin's words in Germany, is doing very well. So we will see.
What's more true?
Bill?
Yeah. Just to add 2 words, perhaps. One shouldn't forget that Putin is living in a concrete bunker from which he is extremely afraid to emerge, except very seldom. I'm 76 now. He's only 2 years younger than me. And in my opinion, when you look at him, this guy is not well, apart from anything else, as well as being delusional. And I would say that one should look at what happened with Prigozhin. Not that Prigozhin ever had a plan to take Moscow. However, the fact that Prigozhin got as far as he did, and the army basically stood by, and then Prigozhin had tea with Putin before he was finally destroyed in a plane. And I would say that things are just not stable in Russia at all, particularly with the military, with such losses. and so many generals have been assassinated or sacked. And the fact that, as I said a moment ago, the Russian army, the Russian offensive is dependent on North Koreans, prisoners, basically people who are being paid huge amounts of money, which will go to their families when they're dead, which they will be at the present rate of casualties. So this is the reason that, plus, I do think the Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe, by the way, with a substantial population, so it's not Russia. But I think Ukraine and Russia have a history. And one of the tragedies now is all my friends in Ukraine, I don't speak Ukrainian, sadly, it's much closer to Polish. But these days, my friends who used to talk to me in Russian won't, you know. And actually, so I say, bear with me for 2 seconds, that Putin will go down in history for 3 amazing achievements. First of all, he saved NATO. And Russia now has NATO on a much bigger frontier than was ever the case before. NATO was dead before February 2022. It's not in a very good state now, but Putin saved it. Secondly, Putin saved Zelensky, who was at the pit of unpopularity in February 2022 for not dealing with corruption in Ukraine. Zelensky had a decision, stay or go. He stayed in his trademark military battle dress T-shirt. And, you know, so Putin will go down in history for Zelensky will go down in history for staying and fighting. And thirdly, Putin turned Ukraine into a nation, which it wasn't. And before, Ukraine had many problems of identity, of language and that kind of thing. I say Ukraine is now definitively a nation and is fighting. And of course, which is the biggest ally in Europe? Poland. That is not surprising at all.
So Jens, could you expand on that? What's your view of internal politics in Russia right now?
What's on? I didn't get this,
internal politics.
Internal politics.
Internal. So
in
Putin,
Russia.
Is peace possible with Putin there? I mean, where are things going politically?
There is in Russia a growing mood to end the war, but this mood is not so much about making a compromise, but to win the war still. To make there is a mood. Okay, we have the Donbass, and we have the Crimea, and we have parts of the this Zaporozhye and Kherson area, and let's draw a line there, and that's okay. Yeah, and that's corresponding with what is Trump proposing, and I have the feeling that many people in Russia would be very happy if the war could end this way. So not the maximum what Putin is demanding, but that what in the opinion of people what they have today. They won't get it for two reasons. First, that Putin's plans are going further. Putin, what I already said, Putin won't stop there. And the second reason is it is not possible. I can't imagine that an Ukrainian government, be it Zelensky or someone else, or the Ukrainian people are agreeing to that. At least not now. Yeah, it's war. A war is always unpredictable in its outcome, or almost all wars are unpredictable. This, at least, has been unpredictable from the beginning on, and there can happen a lot of things, but at the moment I don't see it. I don't see, on the other hand, a weak position of Putin either. He's quite confident in his power, and he did this not the least with the trick to frame this war as an existential war, as not a war against Ukraine, but a war against the West. So many people in Russia believe that we are not fighting against the Ukrainians. They believe that Ukrainians are victims of this war, at least the mass of the Ukrainians, not some banderovцы or so-named fascists, not the government, but people in Russia are very eager to tell apart the government and the people, because they know how they are apart from their government. Yeah, the government is their government on one hand, and on the other hand, the government is there, up. It's not the people, and their perception of what is going on in Ukraine or in other countries is deriving from their experience, from their own experience. So this trick to make it an existential war against the West and not against the Ukrainians, which many people knew, many people have connections with Ukraine, relatives there. So that makes it easier to do. I'm always telling a short story. I have relatives in the Altai region. They're in southern Siberia, north of Kazakhstan, of East Kazakhstan, north of East Kazakhstan. Yeah, and in summer 23 we have been there, and there was an evening in a gathering in a small flat, about 20 people, and we were eating and telling and so on. And then at some time, a young man raised his glass with vodka, yeah, and said, "I want to drink for the Russian, for our men, yeah, that they come back alive." And there I sat and thought, what will I do? What can I drink to that Russian soldiers who are waging a war against Ukraine, that they will come? It's not possible for me. And I said, I have an alaverdi, so it's a counter toast. Yeah, and said, I think, yes, we should. It's always good to drink that people will not die. But I think we should drink too that the Ukrainian soldiers will come home alive. Yeah, and there was a small pause, and then everybody said, "Yes, yes, yes, yeah, we will. What's that?" Yeah. It is nobody wants that people are dying there, but because it's an existential war. We are all, there is a mood, we are all victims. We are victims. And the Ukrainians are victims. Yeah. And in this, they are not responsible as well. They can feel themselves irresponsible for that. And that again, they make it possible not to do anything against this war, because we can't do anything and we are not responsible. Why should I risk anything against that? And all this together is bringing me to the conclusion that at least as the war is going on, and the war is going on for Russia, maybe not really successful, but not catastrophic. The outcome is not catastrophic. This will be a stabilizing factor for inner politics in Russia. Yes, all those things Bill talked about, the fuel shortages, a rising big inflation.
Nothing in the shops. Nothing,
yeah, inflation. The war comes more and more to more Russians directly. All this happens, but it's not, until now, it's not playing a decisive role.
Yes, and could we just segue, I mean, from that into kind of the broader question of where civil society is in Russia right now, and kind of what the prospects for human rights and a vibrant civil society are in Russia in the future. How do you see that? Bill, do you want to lead off on that?
If I could please just add a couple of things, not to disagree with Jens, but to add something which I think is important, which is that the regime in Russia, which is, I mean, Putin, I think, has practically zero contact with ordinary Russians as, you know, what is the ideology, what is the purpose? But in European Russia, where I do have a lot of contacts, so talking about Moscow, St. Petersburg, Ekaterinburg, the regime is doing everything it possibly can for life to proceed as normal. So the whole idea is, Jens agrees with me, so the whole idea is that in the European Russia, there is no war. People are going to coffee bars, people are doing the ordinary, in the big cities. I'm saying in the countryside, for example, where my parents and all live, it's a different story. But the regime so far is carrying on the pretense that there is no war. There's a special military operation somewhere else. And nobody from European Russia, as I said earlier, is dying. People dying are North Koreans, prisoners, and people from the ethnic republics. So, and we don't know, when you say civil society, a very large part of civil society in the past was environmental movements, as well as human rights movements. And some of them were very vibrant and all of it. My impression, and of course, it's very, you know, very hard to find out what is happening, is that civil society as a whole is finding it impossible, or what would have been civil society, because one false step and you're going to prison for a very long time. And there's no question but that the police, the prosecutors and the courts are absolutely doing what the regime tells them to do. And I'm in contact with some brave lawyers in Russia who are doing what they can and trying to stay out of prison at the same time. If I could just add something to that, which is that Putin in 2021 and 2022, and this is insufficiently recognized in the West, this was not a war against the West or a war against NATO. And what Putin went on and on about was that the demon Lenin, who was a German spy, whose whole purpose was to destroy Russia, of course, and Putin has never had much time for the Soviet Union, by the way, because one of his main accusations against Lenin, the German spy working for German money, was that Lenin established the Soviet Union on a federative basis where the Union republics, including Ukraine, had the right to secede, which they finally exercised in 1991. And that was something that Lenin, the German spy, insisted upon. And for Putin, this is absolute anathema. And Putin has said over and over again that Ukraine, created by Lenin, to be an enemy to Russia. And if you don't believe me, you know, there's speech after speech, article after article, articles by Putin's chums in Argumenti Fakti and other places of that kind. So in Putin's delusional mind, what's going on is that there is a nation which does not exist. There is no such nation, was established to harm and destroy, if possible, Russia by the demon Lenin. So the Communist Party in Russia finds itself in a very tough position at the present moment because they say, oh, you know, we still revere and value Lenin. But this is not the line of Putin, by the way. And the reason that Stalin is a great figure for Putin is that for Putin, Stalin is in the line of Peter the Great, Ivan the Terrible, Yekaterina, and so on. That is, that under Stalin, the Russian Empire reached its greatest extent, with half of Germany and the whole of Eastern Europe and the Baltics. So Stalin, of course, is revered, and Lenin, for setting up the USSR on a federative basis, is to be reviled. And I think it's insufficiently recognized that that was the major factor in Putin's mind when, to everyone's astonishment, nobody expected this, and he didn't consult anybody. In February 22, he launched this war. And I think people in Russia, all over Russia, are equally gobsmacked. And I do finally point to the huge number of people who turned out at great risk of themselves when Navalny was murdered. And I think this idea that the Russian people, whatever they might be, because they're hugely diverse, are hurrah, hurrah behind Putin and the war in Ukraine. Well, I doubt it. You know, I do. I really do doubt it.
So thank you, Bill. Jens, do you have any parting words? This is our last question. About civil society and the prospects for kind of a rebirth of the human rights movement in Russia.
I think Bill is right. There is no space for civil society activism left if this is in areas which are perceived by the state as political. So you can do social work still, some environmental work as well. If it's not against, it's that the environmental scene, NGO scene, civil society scene in Russia was so big was partly because that was even in the Soviet Union possible in a way, not in an organized, legalized way, but you could engage in not so much environmental, but nature protection issues, and that is possible still. Then there is, as far as we know, there are a few researchers reporting about that activity, which is quite dangerous for those who are conducting it, and therefore it is not public. Going on, there is a lot of support for Ukrainians living in Russia. There is still support for men who want to leave Russia and to avoid to go to the army. There is support for soldiers who want to leave the war. That are not very much, but there are. And there are some brave people who do something, like those memorials who are organizing this walk through Moscow on the path on the places of the terror in Moscow, who do their work and say, okay, I do it and let's see. And as long as it is possible, we will do it. Yeah.
Yes.
But the repression is quite harsh, but it is still not. And obviously, it's from the point of view of the Kremlin not necessary. It is still not an overall repression like it has been in the Soviet Union. It is still arbitrary. Consciousness arbitrary, so that nobody knows that this I can do and this is not dangerous, and if I overstep this line, then it will be dangerous. Everything might be dangerous today, even like in for something in some social network, or repost, or even something which is I even can't imagine now. Someone finds out from the law enforcement agencies that they can prosecute someone, and there is a totally lawlessness in the security forces. They are, again, especially the FSB, but not only, they are very, very, very mighty today, and that limits any activity, any civil society activity. And then you have to have in mind a lot of activists, and the leading activists, civil society activists, had to leave the country. So they are now working outside the country. But yeah, this is it's a different. You can't do very much. You can't do something. It is better than to do nothing, but it is big difference of being in the country and doing something there, or being outside the country and trying to do something. Though I, for example, know people who are traveling, who are still traveling, going into the country, living outside, organizing things there. There are still activities where some meetings or seminars or conferences are organized outside Russia, with people from inside Russia taking part. There is a lot of activity going on online, through Zoom, Signal, or other means. All this is not without danger, but people are still risking.
Good, thank you. Bill, do you have a few words to wrap this up?
No, I'll just say that there is a massive, on the one hand, I would say the Russian opposition abroad is a disaster. This is not the first time in history. It was not good in the 19th century either, even with Gertsen and Kolokol and etc. So that is a problem. And there's a huge now exile diaspora. But I mentioned the Free University. I have the honor to be on the supervisory board. There are really, by the way, they have 84 new online courses now. So this is not only many academics who were forced to leave, for example, the Higher School of Economics and other great institutions in Russia, and are now teaching online, but many young Russians who are signing up for the courses. So, okay, I'm an academic, so this is just one of many things which are happening. And so I share with Jens the hope that, and the knowledge that these things are known about in Russia. And there's many young people, by the way, in Russia who are anarchists. That's a good old Russian tradition from a couple of centuries back, many of whom have been in prison and are out. And I would say that's something also which Putin and the regime really have to be frightened about. And I would say that Putin must be living in fear, not only that the generals will come and feel his collar, but that he will go the same way that quite a lot of people did in the 19th century, at the hands of people like Lenin's brother.
Well, this has been an extremely illuminating conversation. I've learned a lot, and really appreciate you sharing your deep experience in Russia and in human rights. Both of you, I hope to see you again in Rights in Russia, hopefully in better times. And not to say that we don't have our own issues here in the US, but we won't get into that. So thank you very much, Jens Siegert, Bill Bowring, and take care.
It was a pleasure.